News from Away with your news anchors, Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole.
How's she going, my trout?
Our top story, the leader of Austria's extreme right-wing Freedom Party, Jörg Haider, visited Montreal and Toronto this week.
What was he doing in Ontario?
Oh, near as I can figure, he wanted to get some pointers from Mike Harris.
After a cool reception in Canada, Mr. Haider left, saying, I don't want to be in any country that discriminates against racist bigots.
Alberta militant environmentalist Wiebo Ludwig is in court facing several charges for blowing up oil wells. Oil companies are so intent on pursuing the Ludwig case, they forgot to raise gas prices this week.
The nominations for the 72nd Academy Awards have been announced. This year's biggest pleasant surprise is that Whoopi Goldberg will not be hosting. The broadcast promises to be the largest natural occurrence of silicone and hair weaves under one roof since last year's Oscar show.
A Spanish newspaper claims Augusto Pinochet has brain damage and is unfit to stand trial. Doctors said the injury was a result of watching all 2 hours of Who Wants to Marry a Multi-Millionaire?
The new game show proved to be such a success with the audience that a Canadian version is in the works. It will be called Who Wants to Marry a Guy with His Own Tim Hortons franchise.
Former Russian President Boris Yeltsin is writing his autobiography. Once it's completed, Mr. Yeltsin will become the first world leader to have his memoirs published in the form of a 12-step program.
In Ireland, the peace process is in serious jeopardy.
It's not.
Yes, boy.
No.
Yes, boy, Trout.
The peace process?
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
In Ireland?
In Ireland.
Oh, no.
Yes, boy.
It's in jeopardy.
Yes, Captain.
Well, son of a gun. In other news, presidential candidate George W. Bush is still reeling after his defeat in the New Hampshire primary. He was quoted as saying, if you can't buy your way into the presidency with $70 million in campaign funds, then there's something really wrong with America.
And there's surprising news from the U.S. It's almost 2 months into the new year, and not one Kennedy has died. We merely reports the news. In entertainment news, the Swedish group ABBA was offered $1 billion to tour again, but they turned it down. Here's Seamus with his commentary.
Thank God.
Good commentary, Seamus.
Thank you. Tennis star Andre Agassi has announced he will marry former women's champion Steffi Graf in Las Vegas. They will set the date once the couple decides which one of them is the man.
A recent study says composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart did not die from poisoning. He just passed away at the thought in the future music lovers would be listening to Britney Spears.
Due to an enlistment shortage, the U.S. Army is recruiting high school dropouts. Military analysts feel this is a great idea. These days, who's better trained to use a gun than a high school dropout?
The Toronto Blue Jays have introduced 2 new mascots, and there's a contest to name them. The leading choices thus far are BJ and Bell, Moneybags and Trade Me to a Contender, and Carlos Delgado gets $12 million a year, and all I get is a stupid feather and beak costume.
Still with baseball, the drug Mark McGwire uses to enhance his performance has been found to increase estrogen levels in men. This came as no surprise to McGwire, who is now a 44 double D.
And that's all the news from away. I'm Jimmy O'Toole.
And I'm Seamus O'Toole saying to those of you men who forgot Valentine's Day, it's probably safe. You can go home now.
News from Away update. Brought to you by Airhead Miles for the ditzy shopper. Recommended by Britney Spears.
This just in La Salle, Quebec, a recent immigrant from Bangladesh who runs a convenience store was told by the language police that his French was not good enough. Authorities said they would not close down the store if the gentleman learns the correct French pronunciation of the province's two most important cultural terms, cigarettes and Lotto 649 tickets.
In a related story, a Montreal restaurateur is facing a $7,000 fine because his cardboard beer coasters weren't in French. In response, the owner has replaced his coasters with bilingual ones.
A recent scientific study shows women with shorter index fingers are more likely to be lesbians.
Son of a gun, I'm a lesbian.
Seamus, you're not a lesbian. A lesbian likes women, so that means... Holy jeez, we're both lesbians.
In other news, Harold Grace, who is blind, has been named the head judge for this year's Miss Alberta pageant. According to Mr. Grace, this is not his first beauty contest. 10 years ago, he single-handedly picked Miss Calgary, 1990. The surviving three members of the Beatles are releasing a new tell-all book this fall. The book will retail for over $100 and will be titled The Beatles Saga, From Humble Beginnings to the Breakup Caused by That Bitch Yoko.
Gas prices is not expected to go down till next fall. Here with his commentary is Seamus.
Near as I can figure it, the current influx of crude oil is indexed on a proportional skewed system of diverse liquidation. This, combined with the equity output of petroleum products, as seen through the horizontal capital, is factored exponentially through the Calvert-Meese equation. That is my comment, as plain as day.
Which is?
Canadians, it's PO'd.
Good commentary, Seamus.
Thank you, Jimmy. And that's it for this edition of News from Away.
News from Away Update. Closed captioning brought to you by the Henderson Institute of Keyboarding and Computer Science, where they learn you how to spell real good.
At the World Championship, Russian Elena Bereznaya became the first figure skater to test positive for a banned substance. The skating community is in shock. Everyone thought it would have been a male skater testing positive for estrogen.
I think that's quite enough closed captioning for now.
Cuban President Fidel Castro sent a 31-member delegation to the U.S. to negotiate the return of little Elian Gonzalez. Castro is now preparing a second 31-member delegation to negotiate the return of the first 31-member delegation.
Elian says he would consider returning to Cuba, but he's much too busy with his book deal, his Nike commercial, and preparing for his new Fox TV game show, Who Wants to Be a Cuban Refugee? And finally, the Court of Appeal has given a Quebec woman permission to sue the Bay department store over high credit card interest rates. She is also being allowed to pay her lawyer using her Club Z points.
And that's the news from Away for this season.
Oh, we're done with the news for the summer. Now we're unemployed and that's a bummer. We'll enjoy the summer air, drinking beer in our underwear. Oh, we're done with the news for the summer. There was big news on the education front in Ontario. Each day before classes begin, students must now stand and sing "O Canada." Officials say it's a great idea. It instills students with a sense of pride, plus it gives teachers a chance to frisk them for weapons.
In Montreal, a crime reporter investigating bikers was shot. Outraged Quebecers demanded a new law making it illegal for low-life troublemakers to form their own gangs. Should such a law pass, it could mean the end of the Bloc Québécois.
There are rumors flowing around Ottawa that the NDP and Conservatives might join forces. If they do merge, they'd have a dynamic party of 25 members and 2 hopeless leaders.
Jimmy, in Regina, Premier Roy Romano announced he's stepping down. Everyone in his cabinet was shocked. They thought he'd resigned 2 years ago.
And yet George W. Bush was quick to pay tribute to Canada's longest-serving premier.
There's Roy Romano, Major League asshole.
Well, the hockey season has just started. It's 2 days into the NHL schedule, and already the Calgary Flames and the Vancouver Canucks have been eliminated from the playoffs.
The Exorcist has been re-released with 11 minutes of terrifying demonic images added. We have some of that shocking footage, but we should warn you, it is graphic, and some viewers may find it disturbing.
Aujourd'hui, alors qu'on a un ministre qui meurt, arrête de me tromper, M. le Président.
Holy jeez, I'm not going to sleep tonight.
And that's it for Summer 2000 in review.
Yes, sir.
News from away with your hosts, Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole.
How's it going, my trout? This is our special look back at the events of the year 2000. In November, we had ourselves a federal election, and the results were typically Canadian. No change.
This year, Stockwell Dave made a huge splash on the political scene. He did not campaign on Sundays and swept the West. Imagine how well he would have done if he did not campaign the entire week.
The Florida recount became the focus of the U.S. election, but tonight Floridians have put all that behind them and are rehearsing their counting down to midnight. Let's take a look.
10, 9, 2, 8, 40, 12.
Senator-elect Hillary Clinton accepted an $8 million offer to write a book about her years in the White House. She plans to call it How to Cash In When Your Husband is a Cheating Pig.
And also this year, Lucien Bouchard banned a toy from coming into the province because it spoke only English. Let's have a listen.
Screw you, Lucien. Screw you, Lucien.
Can't see anything wrong with that.
This past year, Toronto had a huge garbage problem, but he was re-elected anyway.
And 2000 was also the year Anne Hesh broke up with Ellen DeGeneres. As a public service, here's our Anne Hesh Watch 2000.
Gay, gay, not gay, gay, not gay, not gay, 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 not gay, gay, not sure, pregnant, gay. And we close our look back at 2000 with our 52 weeks in 52 seconds.
George W. Bush's drunk driving charge resurfaces. Finally, someone to carpool with Ted Kennedy.
Australian Olympics put another steroid on the Barbie.
Disappointing showing by Canada's Olympic team. What do you want for $12 of federal funding?
Overpaid, pampered, whining, underworked Alexei Yashin returns to senators. He's perfectly suited for life in Ottawa.
Joe Clark's election strategy, take your daughter to work day.
All New York World Series. Officials find more baseball bats in stands than on field.
Yoko Ono's new CD, all you need is earplugs.
U.S. elects dead man to Senate. Couldn't happen here. We appoint senators.
Prince Charles and Camilla plan possible wedding. Wedding song to be, Who Let the Dogs Out?
And that that's our look back.
Happy New Year,
Happy
everybody!
New Year!
News from Away with your hosts, Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole, brought to you by Mennonite Speed Stick. Feel confident whether you're raising ye old barn or ye old arm.
How's she going, my trout?
Our top story, Canadian Pacific is splitting into 5 separate companies.
Officials hope all 5 companies are up and running by June 1st, so Jerry Schwartz can take them over by June 2nd.
Canada's trade mission to China is a huge success. However, it got off to a shaky start when Mike Harris showed up with his girlfriend. Members of the mission were confused. They couldn't tell if they were in the Orient or on Temptation Island.
In Prince Edward Island, nearly 135 million kilograms of potatoes were destroyed because warts were found in one crop. To prevent a recurrence of this wart blight, farmers have started using compound spuds. The internet company Napster, which provides free music, may be shut down by the court. No more free music from the net.
In a totally unrelated story, we wish to announce the opening of our new internet website, www.jimmyandseamus'sfreesquidjigginmusic.com.
There's a major trade dispute between Canada and Brazil.
There isn't.
There is.
A trade war?
Yes, boy.
No.
Yes.
With Brazil?
Yes.
The one in South America?
In South America.
No.
Yes.
Where the nuts come from?
Yes, boy.
I like them nuts.
You don't?
Yes, boy.
No.
Yes, I eat them when I watch the hockey.
Oh. How did the Leafs do last game?
They lost.
They didn't.
Yeah.
Well, son of a gun. Elsewhere, there is good news from the world of television commercials today. During the filming of a new ad, a Mazda SUV skidded off the road and ran over the Zoom Zoom Kid.
An Ontario court ruled a company must pay an employee $300,000 after she got drunk at an office party and crashed her car on the way home. Fearing a repetition of such an event, the company has come up with a solution. On the day before the next party, the entire staff will be fired.
Scientists have finally finished their mapping of the genome. Here is Seamus with his commentary.
What the hell's a genome?
Good commentary, Seamus.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Elton John is planning a duet with controversial rap singer Eminem at this year's Grammy Award show. The pair is going to sing Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, I'm Going to Shoot My Mother.
The marriage woes continue for Tom Cruise. Today, the actor was dealt a major blow. A judge awarded Nicole Kidman custody of the couple's mirrors.
With the success of Survivor 2, producers are planning a new show, Facts of Life Survivor. The cast of the 80s sitcom The Facts of Life are put on an island, and whoever is not eaten by Mindy Cohn wins $1 million. And now it's time for news from Away, Point Counterpoint. Seamus and I will now take opposing sides on a controversial issue. Tonight's subject, the U.S. will increase spending on its Star Wars defense system.
I think it's a good thing.
I think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's the news from Away for tonight. Bye for now.
News from Away with your news anchors, Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole.
How's she going, my trout?
Our top story. There was Mandela Mania this week as Nelson Mandela visited Canada. Here he is at a party given by businesswoman Hedda Reisman, who presented the humanitarian with a 20% off coupon at Chapters.
Mr. Mandela was also made a Canadian citizen.
Conrad Black just gave up his citizenship, so all things considered, we've upgraded the country.
With the liberation of Afghanistan, men there are now wearing the pie crust hat called a placool. Also popular are the lemon meringue hat and the butter tart earmuffs.
Last weekend in Ottawa, we saw huge, loud, unruly, out-of-control crowds as tickets sold out quickly for the Harry Potter movie.
Paul Martin gained major concessions at last week's G20 meeting.
He didn't.
He did.
Paul Martin?
Yes,
the finance minister?
Yes.
With the G20?
Indeed.
No.
Yes.
He didn't.
He did.
The heck's the G20?
Damned if I know. In other news, Andrew McNally, creator of the map-making giant Rand McNally, has died. He will be buried at 40 degrees north latitude, 87 degrees west longitude, as soon as they figure out how to refold the body. In Quebec, PQ leader Bernard Landry has put his foot in it again. He's compared the sovereignty situation in Quebec to the events of September 11th. Here's Seamus with his commentary.
The guy's nuts.
Good commentary, Seamus.
Thank you, Jimmy.
You're welcome. It's Grey Cup time again. Calgary against Winnipeg in Montreal. Yes, it's the West versus the not-so-West in the East.
Doesn't make any sense, Jimmy.
It doesn't have to. It's the CFL.
Royal Bank has announced a $2.4 billion profit. Most of that money will be put into research and developing new ways to gouge customers.
In What Was He Thinking news, during a live concert, Paul Anka sang lyrics stating he could not wait until Osama bin Laden was dead.
Holy cheese, I am shocked.
Me too.
I thought Paul Anka was dead.
There is data now coming out on the Leonids meteor shower that lit up the sky last Sunday. It is estimated more stars burned out on that one night than in an entire week at the Betty Ford Clinic.
This week, the Alliance Party confirmed they will hold a leadership review March 20th, 2002. In other news, Stockwell Day announced he'll be looking for work March 21st, 2002.
Canadian researchers have determined women's brains are more densely packed in the area responsible for reason, judgment, and memory.
I bet a woman came up with that theory. Only a woman would. What was I talking about?
Haven't the foggiest.
Should Canadian troops go to Afghanistan? That's the topic for tonight's Pint Counterpint.
I don't think our troops should go.
I think they should. Oh, yes, you're right.
That's Point Counterpoint, and that's the news from away. I'll tell you who said was the football to Canada.
News from away. With your news anchors, Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole.
How's she going, my son?
Our top story?
Alberta plans to tax visiting NHL players to help the financially strapped Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames. If the tax does not generate enough money, after each game, any teeth found on the ice will be auctioned off on eBay.
Switzerland has finally joined the United Nations. To maintain its image of neutrality, the country has decided to sit in council, but they won't vote on anything.
Switzerland also named their official ambassadors to the UN. The Ricola guys.
Jean Chrétien has now publicly addressed the continuing infighting between Alan Rock and Paul Martin. Today, the Prime Minister referred to the two men as Canada's axis of stupidity.
Prime Minister Chrétien was in Australia for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. At a dinner, when someone said, "Throw another shrimp on the Barbie," our Prime Minister nominated Tony Blair. The name Enron has finally been taken off Enron Field, home of baseball's Houston Astros, and it'll be replaced with a new sponsor's name. Possible new sponsors for the stadium are Lens Crafters Glasses in about an hour Field, Kibbles and Bits Field, and Swiffer Stadium.
Actress Anne Hesh became a mother last week, giving birth to a 7-pound bisexual. The baby's doing fine and looking forward to spending most of its adult life in therapy. Here's a picture of the baby with Mom and Dad. Prince Edward is quitting his job as a documentary producer so he can spend his full time tending royal duties, such as waving, accepting bouquets of flowers, and getting into tabloid scandals. Whether this is the right move is uncertain, but one thing is for sure, Prince Edward looks like director Ron Howard.
British Columbia is experiencing an infestation of pine beetles. The beetle, distinctive to the province, burrows into a tree, works for an hour, and then goes for a coffee break at Starbucks.
The Alberta teacher strike has left teachers bitter towards the Ralph Klein government. They vow when they return to class, they'll get on teaching the 3 R's. Razzing, ridiculing, and ripping Ralph.
In Cuba, U.S. military officials say not only are Taliban prisoners being treated properly, some of the terrorists have signed a deal for a new Fox TV show, Guantanamo Baywatch.
British scientists have created a cane inspired by bats to aid blind people. Here we see a visually challenged man with a conventional cane. And here we see the same man with the bat cane.
Quebec is going to recognize marriages for gay couples. This can mean only one thing. It's wedding bells for Bonhomme Carnival.
The Canadian Alliance leadership vote is fast approaching. That's the topic of tonight's Point Counterpoint, our in-depth exchange of opinion.
The Alliance needs Stockwell Day.
Stockwell Day is a washed-up has-been.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's
News from away with Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole.
Happy New Year, my trout.
This is our annual look back at the events of 2002.
Hell's Angels made news this past spring. After years of bad press, they tried portraying themselves in a positive light. Unfortunately, their plan backfired when they were photographed with this man, the mayor of Toronto.
2002 saw Irwin Toy file for protection from its creditors. Company officials attribute their economic problems to poor choices from their new toy division, including Cold Sore Ken and Snakes and Weasels.
This year, Jetsco Airlines started service to Timmins, Ontario. A nationwide search was immediately begun to find someone to fly to Timmins.
In Vancouver, a public school teacher went on summer break as a man and came back as a woman. The bad news, his sex change has caused a public outcry and may jeopardize his job. The good news is he now qualifies for maternity leave. Here's Jimmy with an in-depth explanation of the situation.
What do you expect? It's Vancouver.
In other news, the long-awaited Romano report on healthcare was released. Its many innovative recommendations included a special new health card. Each time you go to the hospital, you get your card punched. After 10 visits, you get a free liposuction.
This year saw the collapse of Enron, Tyco, and WorldCom because of shady accounting by executives. Here was Seamus with his commentary.
You stupid, greedy bastards.
Good commentary, Seamus.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Very good commentary indeed.
I worked on it all afternoon.
In Washington, D.C., the Federal Bureau of Investigation admitted to misplacing 449 guns and 184 laptop computers. Things got so bad, the FBI's 10 most wanted list is now missing criminals 4 through 7.
Also in Washington, President George Bush announced every American would be eligible for a free smallpox shot.
Which is as close to universal health care as the U.S. is going to get.
Good call, Jimmy. Iraq's 12,000-page document on weapons of mass destruction went to the White House. The president's wife, Laura, condensed it into language George could understand. We have tape.
That's Saddam, that's Saddam. I do not like that Saddam. Do you want to bomb Iran? I would rather bomb Saddam. I do not like him in Iraq. I do not like him on my back. I do not like him in a trifle. I do not like him with that stupid rifle. Do you like Afghanistan? I'd rather bomb that damn Saddam. The end. Time for your nap, George.
Now we'll wrap up our look back at 2002 with our 52 weeks in 52 seconds.
Nortel becomes first stock to be sold at dollar store.
Britain says no to cloning. 2 words, royal family.
Yasser Arafat's compound battered by tanks. PLO leader introduced to the joys of open concept living.
Norwalk virus attacks Disney cruise ship. Passengers left singing, hi ho, I really, really, really have to go.
Quebec government extends full parental rights to homosexual couples. Bonhomme ecstatic.
Saddam Hussein's mistress reveals herself. This explains why burqa's so popular.
Kmart files for bankruptcy. Company president hired as Walmart greeter.
Favorite 2002 holiday song for Whitney Houston? I'm Snorting a White Christmas.
Ottawa Roundup, Stockwell Day, rides jet ski into sunset. Jean Chrétien announces retirement. Joe Clark announces retirement. Alexa McDonough announces retirement. It's a start.
Canada's men's and women's Olympic hockey teams win gold, forcing Americans to learn new phrase. We're number 2.
And that's your news from away. Happy New Year!
News from away with Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole. Brought to you by the Canadian Rail System. Try us. We're a blast.
How's she going, my trout? Liberal backbencher Carolyn Parrish is in hot water after the TV cameras caught her saying, "Damned Americans, I hate the bastards." Miss Parrish immediately issued an apology. She said, "The comment was made in the heat of the moment. I am sorry if I offended any of the American bastards."
The U.S. introduced a new UN resolution stating its position on Iraq. It's a long, complicated document. We've condensed it so everyone can understand it.
Hasta la vista.
Public support for a war in Iraq is decreasing. A recent poll shows support has gone from 66% to, well, to these three guys.
On Wednesday night, CBS broadcast an interview with Saddam Hussein and news anchor Dan Rather.
Big deal. Seamus interviewed the crazed dictator a week earlier. Here it is now.
I'm sitting with the man who is about to claim his 3rd consecutive Crazed Leader of the Year award, Saddam Hussein. How's she going, my love?
She's going good, but let's hurry this thing up. I have a bombing to attend at 4.
Okay, the big question, if you could be a tree, what would it be?
What? Who do you think you are, Barbara Walters? What is next? You try to get me to cry?
Did you always want to be leader?
Yes. Even when I was just a small, aspiring despot in kindergarten, I staged a coup to take over the sandbox. But I failed. And none of the other kids liked me. They wouldn't even let me hang the teacher.
One thing for sure, if he were a tree, he'd be a weeping willow.
Good interview, Seamus.
Thank you, Jimmy. In other news, the people of Vancouver have voted to proceed with their bid for the 2010 Winter Olympics. Organizers are doing everything they can to impress the IOC. They've promised state-of-the-art facilities, and the kickbacks will not be in Canadian funds.
There's been 4 train derailments in southern Ontario in 1 week. Transport Minister David Collinet jumped right into action and made this comment. That explains a lot.
After winning his bout last week, boxer Mike Tyson announced he was getting more tattoos on his face. His next tattoo is simply the words, "I'm insane."
Sheila Cox has declared herself a leadership candidate in the race to lose to Paul Martin. She made her official announcement at a Tim Hortons in Hamilton 2 weeks ago, and she's currently campaigning in Tim Hortons across the country. Today she was at the one in Red Deer, Alberta.
I think I would be a good leader of the Liberal Party because I'm from Hamilton, and if I can deal with that, I can deal with anything. But that John Manley, he's like a donut. He looks good on the outside, but there's nothing in the middle. And Paul Martin, he's yesterday's donut. He's stale and hard and crummy, and most of the sprinkles have fallen off. Me, on the other hand, I'm like a Tim Hortons cup of coffee. Hot and fresh and full of good taste. Who forgot the damn sugar?
She's got my vote.
In Heavens Above news, a Newmarket, Ontario strip club has been converted into a church. The transformation has been very successful, and it's the first house of worship to offer lap praying. Instead of a plate, you just tuck your collection money into a G-string. Gives new meaning to the phrase, playing a little hymn on the organ.
A Texas woman has been sentenced to 20 years for running over her husband with her Mercedes-Benz. The jury knew she was guilty after she testified her car got 5 husbands to the gallon.
The roof of Washington Toys R Us collapsed last week. A spokesperson apologized for the inconvenience and admitted the building never should have been made out of Lego. A recent poll suggests the NDP has doubled its popularity under Jack Layton.
They hasn't.
They has?
The NDP?
Yes, by.
Under Jack Layton?
Yes, by.
No.
Yes.
Who's Jack Layton?
Damned if I know. In other news, Canada has taken possession of the 3rd pre-owned submarine bought from the British Navy. We have tape of the delivery.
A recent study shows 1 out of 2 Canadians is overweight. Can I help it if I like seal flipper cheesecake?
The possibility of war in Iraq looms larger every day, and that's our subject in tonight's Point Counterpoint.
I is against a war in Iraq.
Me too.
And finally, dozens of protesters got naked in a Vancouver park to show their opposition to a war in Iraq. Now, there's some weapons of mass destruction that should be banned.
That's news from away.
News from away with your hosts, Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole. Brought to you by this season's new blockbuster television show, The West Nile Wing. Drama that really sucks.
How's she going, my trout?
We're in St. John, New Brunswick for our special News from Away look back at the summer of 2003.
It was right some summer, boy. There was burning fire, power failure, mad cows.
And that was just in Kobe Bryant's pants.
Another hot topic was same-sex marriage. After the Prime Minister came out in support of it, the Bishop of Calgary said Mr. Chrétien will spend eternity in hell. In response, Chrétien said when he retires, he has no plans to live in Calgary. St. John MP Elsie Wayne had some pointed questions on the subject in the House of Commons.
Why do they have to be out here in the public, always debating that they want to call it marriage? Why are they in parades? Why are they dressed up as women on floats? If they're going to live together, go live together and shut up about it. There isn't any need for this nonsense whatsoever.
The outspoken Elsie went on to demonstrate the traditional heterosexual relationship.
Ontario went to the polls last week. The Conservatives spent millions on the election, and that was just for Ernie Eves' hair gel.
The voters of Ontario clearly showed their preference for Premier when they elected Dalton McGuinty, better known as Norman Bates. He beat the Conservative incumbent, Dracula.
On September 29th, Prince Edward Island also had an election.
In other news this summer, Peter Mansbridge grew a beard, but producers of the National forced him to cut it when he got carried away.
In Saskatchewan, paleontologists made the largest discovery of Tyrannosaurus rex droppings in history.
What a load of crap. As we reported earlier this summer, NBA superstar Kobe Bryant was charged after an encounter with a young woman at a Colorado spa. Here is Seamus with his commentary.
You stupid millionaire horn dog!
Good commentary, Seamus.
Thank you, Jimmy.
And finally, our entertainment wrap-up. Liza and David broke up. Britney and Madonna made out. Ben and J-Lo don't care.
And that's the news from away.
That it is, my trout.
News from away with your news anchors Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole. Brought to you by the Canadian dollar. At today's rates, we're almost like a real dollar.
Happy New Year, my trout.
Welcome to our look back at the events of 2003.
After months in hiding, Saddam Hussein was captured on December 13th. The former Iraqi president now admits it was a mistake posing for this picture.
Prime Minister Paul Martin appointed a cabinet with many new faces. Former ministers such as David Collinette are looking forward to other appointments. In fact, he has one on Monday at the Employment Insurance Office.
In March, the U.S. attacked Iraq with Operation Iraqi Freedom. This name replaced the original one, Operation Iraqi Liberation, because officials thought the initials might send the wrong message.
This winter, many people scrambled for flu shots. Doctors are telling Canadians there's no need to worry about catching the flu. West Nile or SARS will probably get you first.
Researchers have now isolated the first high-resolution images of the West Nile virus. Now, here is the image magnified 1,000 times. Frightening, isn't it? Ooh.
This just in, thousands of Ontarians have been left without power. There wasn't another blackout, they just can't afford the new electricity rates.
In December, John Chrétien officially stepped down as Prime Minister after 10 years. Here is Seamus with his commentary.
It's about time.
Good commentary, Seamus.
I sure nailed that one, Jimmy.
Yes, sir. Among the many things John Chrétien had to do, now that he no longer has a chauffeur, was to renew his driver's license. We have obtained tape of his road test.
In October, Roy Horn of the illusionist act Siegfried and Roy was attacked by a tiger during their Las Vegas show. People in Vegas were shocked, saying, if it had to happen, why couldn't it be Celine Dion? This year, the star of Free Willy, Keiko the Killer Whale, died of pneumonia at age 27. Pallbearers at the funeral included Nemo, Charlie the Tuna, the Little Mermaid, and the incredible Mr. Limpet.
This year, Canadian Olympian figure skater Jamie Salé raised a few eyebrows when she posed in FHM magazine. She was topless, except for some judiciously placed snow.
Let me see that.
What do you think, Seamus?
Oh, I can't wait for spring thaw.
And that's our look at 2003.
See you for more in 2004.
Happy New Year.
News from away with Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole.
How's she going, my trout?
Our top story, the new Conservative Party of Canada has another leadership candidate. Belinda Stronach. She's female, under 50, and has done the impossible. She's made Stephen Harper look exciting.
NASA announced the Hubble telescope will be put out of action. This is terrible news for Conservative Party leadership hopeful Tony Clement. The telescope was the only thing powerful enough to spot one of his supporters.
The Bush administration is handing out green cards to illegal immigrants who agree to work jobs Americans refuse to do. Some of the jobs included a night watchman, janitor, and Catholic altar boy.
Officials say the mad cow problem in Alberta is getting out of hand. Today at a local high school, an entire 4-H club had to be destroyed.
A Victoria's Secret store in New York City has been caught selling used lingerie. Ladies, this means that thong you just bought could have been a pair of boxers. The RCMP is proceeding with its investigation of the activities of George Radwanski. The former privacy commissioner defended his outlandish spending habits, saying, as privacy commissioner, he didn't think anyone had the right to check up on him. Prime Minister Martin said the government should never have appointed anyone who looks like an Ewok with glasses.
In Ontario, Premier Dalton McGuinty has announced people convicted of welfare fraud will no longer be cut off social assistance for life. After his string of broken promises, it comes as no surprise the Premier has sympathy for those who deceived the system.
Premier McGuinty is also rolling back legislation for the 60-hour work week, which proves what every Ontarian already knows: when it comes to working, this government isn't.
An Australian man has become Disneyland's 500 millionth guest. He celebrated the occasion by holding Mickey Mouse over a hungry crocodile.
In other news, 10 mail carriers in Hull, Quebec are in trouble after refusing to deliver mail in minus 40-degree temperatures. The carriers are looking to change their slogan to "Come rain or snow or sleet or hail, if it's minus 40, use email."
Molson Breweries have just unveiled their newest product, Molson Ultra, a low-carb beer. This is great news for guys. Now, a 250-pound beer gut will only feel like 249 pounds.
The Dalai Lama is coming to visit in April. The spiritual leader says Tibet and Canada are very similar. In his homeland, the denial of possessions and money is called Buddhism. Here, it's called the Canadian tax system.
News that never-before-seen photos from WW2 were released over the internet had thousands of people excited. However, after seeing the pictures, these same people were bitterly disappointed to discover WW2 was not a wrestling event.
Canada is considering the adoption of a color-coded terrorist alert system similar to that being used in the U.S. However, instead of red, orange, yellow, blue, and green, the Canadian colors will be 5 different shades of gray.
Now, Seamus and I will debate this controversial issue at length in Point Counterpoint. I think colour coding is bad, it's un-Canadian, and it undermines our individual rights and freedoms.
I think it's good.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's news from away.
News from away with Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole.
How's she going, my trout?
In the news tonight, an unemployed woman in BC returned $170,000 she found in a plastic bag and only received a $50 reward. In a related story, an executive at a liberal ad firm found $50 in the street and received a $170,000 reward.
After a week filled with violent shootings, the city of Toronto had a quiet weekend. Only 4 people were stabbed.
To help keep Toronto streets safe, Police Chief Fantino has called for a banning of all handguns and Bertuzzis.
Vancouver Canucks weapon of mass destruction, Todd Bertuzzi, was suspended for the rest of the season by the NHL for his violent attack on another player. On a positive note, Quentin Tarantino has signed Bertuzzi for his next action film, Kill Aki. The Church of England began running ads for an online vicar to take care of worshippers at its first internet parish. The idea allows web surfing parishioners to sin with one hand while asking forgiveness with the other.
Scientists in Ethiopia have discovered fossils that trace pre-human history back 6 million years. From those bones, cryptozoologists have created a computer-generated image of the first pre-human.
Workers at Magna International are being urged to support Belinda Stronach's conservative leadership bid. This has sparked accusations of strong-arm tactics by her opponents. Company officials denied the allegation and then released Stronach's new campaign slogan, "Vote Belinda and no one gets fired."
Pete Rose received some good news. After years of being denied baseball's Hall of Fame, the slugger has been honored. Here's WWE tape of Pete being inducted into wrestling's Hall of Fame. Martha Stewart's been found guilty on 4 felony counts and awaits sentencing. This story has sparked much public interest. Here is Jimmy with a new feature we're calling Jimmy's New Feature.
Jimmy's New Feature.
Well, Martha Stewart is facing a prison term. She reassured her fans that she will stop at nothing to appeal the case. And she must be serious because she says this time she'll even consider telling the truth. One of the jurors said he had no choice but to vote guilty. It was the only way he could stop his wife from buying more Martha Stewart products. Fashion insiders predict with Martha's conviction, stripes will be big this year. Prison is a volatile place where tempers flare, people are treated inhumanely and belittled for no apparent reason. I think Martha will feel right at home. I'm Jimmy, that's my feature, and it's new.
Jimmy's New Feature.
The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board has stated air travel would be safer if airlines weighed their passengers. In response, a new specialty carrier is open for business, Air Lardo. The planes never leave the ground. They just taxi along the highway to their destination.
In Look What's Popping Out news, Janet Jackson is going to host Saturday Night Live. As a result, the U.S. terror alert system has been upgraded to Code Nipple.
California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger has accepted the position of executive editor of Muscle and Fitness magazine. In a similar move, Alberta Premier Ralph Klein has accepted the position of executive editor of Flab and Laziness magazine.
And that's news from away.
News from away with Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole.
How's she going, my truth?
What a year it's been by. The Supreme Court has approved same-sex legislation. It's being hailed as a triumphant decision. After 107 days without NHL hockey, Canadian men finally have something to get excited about.
Up until now, the only way hockey fans could get their fill of action was by going to an NBA game.
In November, John Kerry lost the presidential election. In retrospect, party insiders said the Democrats never should have nominated someone who looks like the model for The Scream.
A leaked report suggests the British Navy apparently knew the subs it sold to Canada had faulty wiring, but they thought everything would be fine as long as the subs were not immersed in water.
This year, Major League Baseball struggled with yet another steroid scandal. Today, even more troubling news. Turns out the entire Blue Jays team tested positive for Salmonex.
In Ukraine, because of a huge controversy surrounding crooked voting procedures, a second election was held December 26th. After the votes were tallied, the official winner was announced.
It's been confirmed Viktor Yushchenko was poisoned. He was a youthful-looking man this summer. Then he was secretly given dioxin, which has the dreaded side effect of making you look like Nick Nolte. Yushchenko's doctors in Vienna agreed they hadn't seen so many toxins in one person's body since the last time they examined Keith Richards.
This year, Tommy Douglas was crowned the greatest Canadian.
Oh, wasn't that fantastic? Oh. Who's Tommy Douglas?
Canada Post is under investigation after a 15-year-old boy was unable to send an AK-47 across the border. The post office says next time the boy will have to use the full postal code.
One of the hottest-selling toys this holiday season, the Robo Sapien Robot. The mechanical gadget can walk, talk, and lean over in 4 directions. Creators say the android was inspired by conservative leader Stephen Harper.
News from away with your news anchors, Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole.
How's she going, my trout? Top in election news, Stephen Harper has said he will lower the GST from 7% to 5%.
You think it's a good election promise?
Worked for Chrétien.
2 Canadians are being held hostage in Iraq. In a short video, one of the hostages said the conditions here are terrible, but on the plus side, at least we don't have to go through another election campaign.
World Anti-Doping Agency Chairman Dick Pound says 33% of NHL players use performance-enhancing drugs. On the other hand, 99% of NHL players say Dick Pound is a weasel-brained puckhead.
Because of escalating costs, the Vancouver 2010 Olympics have had to redesign some venues. The Athletes' Village now looks like this.
This week, U.S. President Bush unveiled his plan for victory. He set a deadline of spring for all American troops to be out of Vietnam.
With the federal election campaign officially underway, the Liberal Party is having problems in Quebec. They can't find an ad agency that hasn't been indicted.
Deputy Conservative leader Peter MacKay is dating another blonde billionaire socialite rich babe, this time Sophie Desmarais. Sophie says she plans to date him till Election Day and then dump him.
2 New Jersey women swapped kidneys to save each other's husbands. It's a feel-good story, and much better than husbands putting their organs in each other's wives.
Environmentalists attended a Montreal conference to discuss climate change. To demonstrate the horrors of global warming, delegates were shown this: Bonhomme in a thong.
And that's news from away.
News from away with Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole.
How's she going, my trout?
In tonight's news, the Red River in Manitoba has reached its highest level since the devastating floods of 1997. New Minister of Public Safety, Stockwell Day, surveyed the region.
Former Ontario NDP Premier Bob Rae has stated he might, possibly, maybe, consider thinking about, running for the leader of the Liberals. That brings the total number of declared candidates to 86.
People in Italy are worried about their new unstable minority government, which has placed the country in a state of uncertainty. Oh, my mistake, that's Canada.
Scotland has reported its first case of avian flu. Due to the migration pattern of Canadian snow geese, environment officials have ordered before takeoff each bird be covered with Vicks Vapor Rub.
More embarrassment for the royal family. Prince Harry was seen at a strip club. He tried to disguise his identity, but one dancer said not too many patronize a strip bar dressed as Hermann Goering.
A spokesperson for the Bandido Biker Club has criticized the media for coverage of recent events. The spokesperson said members of the group are just ordinary, fun-loving motorcycle enthusiasts who happen to drive tow trucks, shoot people, and sell cocaine.
There's concern in Alberta over how to deal with 4,500 infected bison. Officials are not sure whether they should cull the herd or give them a drama series on CBC and wait for them to disappear.
Well, the Rolling Stones performed in China. This is the first time the band has been in the country since they played at the unveiling of the Great Wall.
A theme park in PEI based on the King Arthur legend had a lance, battle axe, and a coat of armor stolen. Police have no suspects but are investigating a new musical. Anne of Green Gables goes medieval on Lord of the Rings.
An international survey has named Vancouver the third best city in the world. How Canadian is that? The Winter Olympics are still 4 years away, and already they've been awarded the bronze.
The Writers Guild of America has named Casablanca as the greatest screenplay ever written. Coming a close second was Deuce Bigalow.
This month's edition of Playboy names Montreal's McGill University as one of North America's top 10 party schools. Officials at McGill could not be reached for comment as they were all out judging a wet t-shirt contest.
In Parliament this week, MPs debated the Accountability Act. This marks the first time the words accountability and MPs have been used in the same sentence.
And that's it for News from Away.
News from Away with your news anchors Jimmy and Seamus O'Toole. Brought to you by Buckley's Cranberry Juice. Combines the bitterness of cough syrup and the tartness of cranberries. Yuck.
How's she going, my trout?
In tonight's news, the Harper government has announced $1.5 billion in funding for alternative energy. Subsidies will be given to plants generating electricity from wind, solar power, or burning copies of the old Clean Air Act.
Claiming identity theft, the Liberal Party has blocked a phony Stefan Dion page on the MySpace website. The news came as a shock as no one knew the party leader even had an identity.
China launched a missile that destroyed a satellite in space. The order was given by China's highest-ranking military officer, Darth Wang.
Wing Li, I am your father.
Is you quite finished?
Pretty much, yeah.
Good. The RCMP has pulled 27,000 counterfeit $20 bills from circulation in Quebec. Police became suspicious when they noticed a series of bills that had Bonhomme massaging the Queen.
In British Columbia, a rash of bed bugs has been found in ritzy Vancouver hotels.
Holy jeez, even the bed bugs is mellow out there.
And you know, By, you get a better quality bed bug in Newfoundland motels at a fraction of the cost.
No.
Yes, By.
A fraction of the cost?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
The same kind of insect?
Yes.
Well, bugger me. In other news, France has complained Canadian wineries unfairly received $25,000 government subsidies. Here is Seamus with his commentary.
Hey, France, you didn't complain when our Canadian wine marched into Paris and liberated your sissy French wine from the Führer's German wine. Stick a cork in it.
Nice metaphor, Seamus.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Longtime game show legend Bob Barker is finally retiring. He's stepping down as host of The Price is Right to spend more quality time with his wrinkles.
A California company is marketing the Fish and Flush combination toilet with an aquarium on top. It comes complete with very nervous fishies.
The closed captioning of News from Away is sponsored by the Doomsday Clock Radio. It wakes you up 5 minutes before the big boom.
Donald Trump got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. To make sure Rosie O'Donnell never steps on it, he had it placed in front of a gym.
And that's the News from Away. Nice going? Yes, my boy. Just like a fish slapping the old cod. How's she going, my trout? I'm Jimmy O'Toole, and this is my brother Seamus.
And a warm welcome back to you all.
We're taking a special look at some of the events of the past few months.
A lot of hard questions were raised this summer.
Like, who wants to be a Canadian millionaire? Who wants to be a Survivor millionaire? And what's that floating in our drinking water?
In August, 6.4 million Canadians tuned in to the final episode of Survivor. Let me put that into perspective. Roughly 1 in every 4 Canadians has no life.
Over in Britain, there was a bunch of angry truckers to protest high gas prices. They set up blockades and effectively shut down crucial shipments, including this one.
On the campaign trail in the US of A, presidential hopeful George W. Bush took time to make an impassioned, eloquent speech.
He's got my vote.
This summer, Prime Minister Chrétien took time to get to know what was on the mind of the average Canadian. Now, that's a change. Usually the only thing on his face in public is egg.
In September, the Olympics dominated the news. Equestrian Eric Lamaze was dropped from the Canadian team when he tried to snort his horse.
But Lamaze appealed the decision. He said it was all a big mistake. It was the horse that took the cocaine.
Several competitors at the Sydney Games were caught taking performance-enhancing drugs. The problem was so bad, one country had to send home its athletes. The Bulgarian women's weightlifting team.
Canada did well in many of the new Olympic sports, but our strongest event wasn't included. Synchronized water dorks. Let's look at the final medal count standings. The United States finished with 97, Russia with 88, anabolic steroids were third with 59, followed by cocaine and horse tranquilizers. And Viagra got one up on Canada to round out the total.
Yes, boy. Canada did not win as many medals as we'd hoped for, but there was a reason for that.
We suck.
No, Seamus. Underfunding. The government did not give enough money to support our athletes.
Not true, Jimmy. In fact, the Canadian women's rowing team said that statement is false.
When did they say that, Seamus?
When they were rowing back to Canada from Australia.
More to come as we look back on the events of the summer of 2000.